Hi there, my name is Abby. Welcome back to Abby Knits. Normally, I partake in talking you through my week in knitting in the form of weekly knitting vlogs, sometimes a project vlog, but today is very exciting because it is the first knitting podcast, which I have decided to call A Month in Wool. So this is the A Month in Wool podcast, and I really hope you enjoy. And I'm really excited. This is just going to run like a standard knitting podcast. I'll talk you through my finished objects of the month, some whips, and any acquisitions that I've made throughout the month. My hope is that this will sort of summarize the vlogs. So if anyone's not interested, or if you sort of jump in at a middle part of the month and you don't want to go back and watch a separate weekly vlog, that this podcast will exist every month and can sort of show you what we've been up to and what's been going on, and as well a little bit more detail about the objects themselves, because I think this is a good space to do that. Sometimes I don't want to make the vlogs too long, so I thought a podcast would be a really awesome and fun space for that. So yeah, this is A Month in Wool, and I'm going to talk you through my finished objects. So this first one is really exciting because it is the first whip that we worked on the vlog this month, and I believe when we started I had only finished the collar because I had started this on Christmas Day. And that is my Monday sweater, knit up in Cardiff Cashmere in the color Cameo. This is Cardiff Cashmere Classic. This is the Monday sweater by Petite Knit, and I knit it in a size small, and it only took me 9 balls of yarn to get through, which I was really impressed by. My husband got me a box of Cardiff Cashmere Classic, which comes in with 10 balls, which is sort of thought to be like a sweater's quantity. So I was really excited that I only took 9, because you'll see another whip which is working with that last one. So I've got a little bit to say. It's not exactly what I wanted it to be, but it's mostly what I wanted. I did block it in the vlog, and if you go back and watch those scenes, it made the jumper look very sheer and very thin. So I do think the Cardiff Cashmere is not technically a DK, even though it says that it is. It's technically a sport weight. So I think when I blocked it, it sort of stretched the fibers out more than if it had been a DK weight, because I was pulling. I also pulled a little bit to make the sleeves even because one sleeve was shorter. So I think I stretched the fibers out a little bit, and I just wasn't liking how it looked. So I did end up blocking it a second time, which is sort of in the form you see now. When I blocked it the first time, the neckline was way stretched. So I do have an elastic in it, but I think it's just sort of sitting fine now. I think I've sort of unstretched it in the process of a second block. It's also, you can tell the fibers on the sleeves are much plumper, and the fabric itself was significantly softer and like airier, and almost, I know a lot of people say they like this because it has a little bit of like a mohair feel. So I will say, after blocking it the second time, it's so much better. I've not worn it. It is a little bit sheer, but it's definitely better than before, and it didn't actually affect the length all that much. So it is a little bit cropped, even though that wasn't on purpose, because I did measure to get to pattern length, and for some reason I measured wrong. So yeah, the only mistakes that I made, or there's some weird ends now that I need to go back and weave in, just because they've popped through in the process of the second blocking, and you can sort of see my German short rows peeking out in the front there. But overall, it's really not bad at all. It's really quite nice. It feels really nice. This is sort of my just like throw over at home jumper. I don't really want to wear it out because cashmere is such a fragile fiber. I don't want to like get it caught on anything. So this is kind of my at-home jumper. It's so cozy. It actually feels even better, and I haven't worn it since the second block, and it feels so nice. But yeah, I'm really happy with it. I think my ribbing is slightly different on each sleeve, but they have ended up being the same length mostly, so that is okay with me. Yeah, I don't think I have much else to say other than I'm really, really happy with it. I'm happy with the color. If you're watching the vlog, you know I was a little bit worried about the color being too warm, but I think it's fine. I think it's perfect. So yeah, my only issue is that it's slightly sheer, and I'm happy with my reblocking. I will say I reblocked it in almost completely cold water, and I did not pin it at all, and I think that helped with the fibers. So if you do end up working with carded cashmere or with a cashmere fiber in this form of a jumper, I would recommend very cold water and just sort of using your hands to move the fabric. And then I also read on the internet to sort of fluff up the fibers, you can sort of rub your hands. So I did that in a couple of areas. I don't know if it did anything. I feel like it might have. But yeah, that's what the internet said for taking care of cashmere. I'm definitely wary of the care that this is going to require now. Yeah, so I'm making sure that I take really good care of this. I'm really happy with it. I highly recommend this pattern as well. I'm itching to cast on a Knitting for Olive version of this with their mohair and merino in like dusty blue or something. I feel like that would be stunning. Sort of like this color, but a little dustier. I think it'd be so gorgeous. So yeah, I loved the pattern. I would highly recommend it. I know it's a basic pattern, but I just really think it creates a really refined and elegant garment. And just like classic jumper, I don't think there's any reason that this wouldn't fit in someone's wardrobe no matter your style. So that was my first finished object. This was the meat of the month. I spent most of my month working on this. But I do have one more finished object to show. My second finished object was mentioned a couple times in the vlogs. I also made a little short, if you want to check that short out, of the blocking process. And that is of my Evie mittens. Now this is a pattern by Woozy by Celine. It was my first time following a pattern of hers. I'm really interested in her Suki cardigan. However, I wanted to make some mittens and I really liked the pattern on here, and I had some of Sorella's DK, like her classic DK. I believe it's a superwash merino, but I had some in the color Water Lily, which is from her Summer in London collection when I made a little cheeky yarn order, and I had used the other skein that I bought in my Sophie hood. So I thought I'll make some mittens because I love this color. But as you can see, I did not quite have enough. So 50 grams was not quite enough. I think it was 50 grams of DK. It didn't quite get me through the mitten. So what I ended up using was some leftover drops alpaca that I had from my original Daydreamers cardigan that I knit last year, which is a slightly different green, but I don't think it's horrible. It's not my favorite. I do think it's a little bit obvious, more obvious than I thought it was going to be. And you can see the thumb. I feel like the thumb's not too bad, but really in this pattern, I think it's very obvious. I did an I-cord edging instead of the double knit simply because these mittens are very long. I even cut off the repeats to start the mitten. I didn't start at the thumb gusset, but I started, you're supposed to do 2 repeats of the pattern, and I only did 1. They're already very long. So I just did an I-cord. I love an I-cord. I think it's classy. I think it's simple. I think it does look homemade, but not in a bad way. Like, I think for the mittens, it's a perfectly fine way to finish a mitten. I took 1 repeat off the thumb gusset, and I should not have done that. I think I miscounted. It's supposed to be 13, and I think I've only got 12. So the thumbs are slightly short. However, I don't find that that particularly affects the wearing experience. I have also included a tiny little, almost like buttonhole, right where my pointer finger goes on the right hand mitten. That way, if I need to do anything, I don't have to take the entire mitten off. I can just stick my finger through the buttonhole and use like a phone or a tab if there's a screen of some kind that I need to be using. So yeah, I don't think there's any other modifications. I did block them. I wouldn't recommend, I don't know, I feel like these are very thin. They feel to me not quite the thickness that you want a mitten to be, which is fine. I mean, it doesn't get freezing cold where I am. I also wouldn't wear the mittens probably very often anyway, probably just as I'm walking to and from places. But that is something to be aware of. I do think that I held the alpaca double because I think it created DK, but it might be slightly even thicker than a DK. It might be just over a DK weight. And I think a full glove of the alpaca held double would have been fine. I think that would have actually been more of a sturdiness for the mitten. Especially I can tell in the thumb. You can see how much thicker the thumb is on the right hand mitten than the left, just in terms of like stitch definition, and the fabric looks significantly thicker. So I think if I had used 2 of alpaca, it would have made more of a warm mitten, but I'm not mad at it, and I wanted to use up the yarn. So I'm quite happy. They're really cute. I did wear them out today to go get some milk, and they're fine. They do what they're supposed to do. So I do recommend the pattern. It's very simple. basically the need for the pattern is to get the sort of star repeat. But then it's a very simple, once you have that, it's pretty straightforward. I think if you've made mittens before, I have not made mittens before, so I do think the pattern was helpful for me. But I think if you've made mittens before, you could probably figure out the repeat and make a similar type, just following a standard mitten pattern. So yeah, I knitted on Magic Loop. It was my first time being successful on Magic Loop, so I'm very happy with that. And I think that's all I have to say. So yeah, these are my Eevee mittens. Second finished object. Those were all of my finished objects for the month of January. We did go through those processes all in the vlog. I don't think the mittens took very long. I think they're quite a small portion. Literally a majority of the vlogs this month have been the Monday sweater. If you want to see the sort of behind the scenes process of making those, there are vlogs, which I have a collection, a playlist of the vlogs. So you're very welcome to go back and watch those if you're interested in how those processes went. So I'm going to start now on my whips. Now the first whip I have is honestly going way better than I thought it was going to be going. And I have gotten to halfway. Actually, I haven't even updated the vlog on this yet, but I've gotten halfway through the repeats for the yoke. So I'm almost to the separation of sleeves, which is very exciting. So this is the Daydreamers cardigan by Kuto Wakika. And I am knitting it in Drops Air in the color, I think it's soft yellow or light yellow, and I'm holding it with the Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair in Dusty Banana. So these are my two yarns. Ooh, they're so gorgeous together. And so this is sort of what my fabric is looking like. Very yellow. I was hoping it'd be a little more pale, but I probably should have held that with elderflower if I was wanting more pale, so I'm not mad at it. I'm okay with it. But I'm knitting the size large, which I have knit a Daydreamers cardigan before, like I mentioned with the mittens. I've knitted a Daydreamers cardigan before, and it did not turn out like I wanted to at all. And I think that was my fault, and I think it was kind of the pattern. As I'm reading people's stories with the pattern, I think the pattern is slightly to blame as well. So my fault with my previous Daydreamers cardigan is that I picked the wrong yarn. I held Drops Alpaca with Drops Soft Silk Mohair in the color Pistachio Green. It might be Pistachio Ice Cream. I think it's Pistachio Ice Cream. And it's gorgeous color. I love it. And at the time I was debating between using Drops Air and picking like a firmer fabric, a firmer fiber. And for some reason I went with alpaca, which at the time I wasn't aware that alpaca is not a very like sturdy fiber. It very much stretches and is very thin, whereas I think with Drops Air I was worried about the same stretching. However, because I'm holding it with a mohair, which I would have done in the other cardigan had I used Drops Air, it probably shouldn't have much of a problem. When I blocked my swatch, it was perfect. It was exactly what I wanted. So yeah, I'm knitting it in the size large because my sort of, and I think everybody sort of thought while I'm making this, is that they want to make almost a dupe of the Cezanne Emile cardigan, which I do own. And I measured the width of that cardigan, and it's the size, I own the size small in that Cezanne Emile cardigan, which is the measurements of the pattern's large. So that is why I'm making a large, whereas last time I made a medium with the thought that I would get a similar size, but for some reason, with her gauge and the way that she wants the cardigan to fit, to even get the size of the Cezanne small, you have to knit the large. So I'm planning on making a whole like deep diving video on making a dupe of this cardigan because I've done a lot of research and basically like studied this pattern. I do think it's perfect. I think the pattern looks exactly like the Emile cardigan. And I think just omitting some things and changing the needle size a little bit, and you have literally a dupe. So sort of my plan with this cardigan is I'm going to omit the ribbing at the bottom, and I will be making a balloon sleeve as well as making a longer ribbing on the cuff. So those are my only changes, which obviously I haven't gotten to yet because I'm just on the repeats of the yoke. However, last night, I think I have a gauge problem. So I've gone up 2 needle sizes, knitting this on a 6mm needle where the pattern calls for a 5mm needle. However, when I gauge swatched with a 5mm, I was way off gauge. I wasn't even hitting gauge. It was like 3 stitches smaller than what I was supposed to be hitting. So I sized up to 5.5, still wasn't hitting gauge. I blocked that one, still wasn't hitting gauge. So I did a 6mm and I hit gauge after blocking. So before blocking, I wasn't hitting gauge. So I hit it after blocking. I have measured the stitches on here and I'm hitting gauge before blocking now on the 6mm, which is really frustrating because on gauge it's perfect and I wouldn't like this to get much bigger than the large. I think the oversized look that I'm wanting is perfect on, I think it's like 120 centimeters across the bust, which is exactly what the bust shape of my Emile cardigan is. So I really don't want the gauge of this to change much more, but I'm worried that now it's going to grow. So I will keep you updated on that in the vlogs on how that goes. But yeah, I'm just a little worried that now my gauge is kind of off. But then I measured it. I don't even know if I'm measuring the gauge right. So, because I measured it again and then I was like one stitch off. I was like, ooh, maybe I'll be okay with blocking. But I do have my swatch, which was definitely knit on 6mm and it looks perfect. So if this behaves like my swatch, there should be no problems. I will say it's not looking huge at the minute, which is good. When I sort of fold it, I know I won't quite be able to tell until I split for sleeves, but at the minute, it's looking smaller than the width of my cardigan. So I'm hoping with blocking, it just is perfect. So yeah, that is my Daydreamers cardigan. This is my new sort of whip of the month. This one will hopefully be done in February. I'm not trying to rush. I really don't try to knit fast. It's just sort of an accidental thing depending on how much time I spend on something. I do have another whip that I'm going to show you, which I've been working on since November, and simply because I'm not picking it up, it's just not been finished. So I do think if I finish this cardigan, if I work on it consistently, it will probably be done in February, but I'm not in a rush. I'm just knitting on what I like at the minute. So yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say about the Emile cardigan. This is not about the Daydreamers cardigan, but yeah, I'm just a little worried about gauge, and I'm hopeful that it will all be okay in the end. You also will, over time, be able to tell that I have a color palette. So yellow is one of the colors in my color palette. I will probably have more to update you with next time, and there will be a project vlog for this cardigan as well. So there'll be some in-depth discussion about that in the project vlog if you're interested. That might come out later in February or March. But yeah, that was whip number 1. Whip number 2 is a very small whip that I started yesterday with the spare ball of Cardiff Cashmere. In one of my videos, I said that my dream is to have a drawer of Sophie scarves in like every color that I love. Not like every color of the rainbow, just every color that I think suits me really well, and there are quite a few colors. So I'm on the way to make that happen. This will be my second Sophie scarf, and I am knitting it in Cardiff Cashmere in the color Cameo, which is the same color as my Monday sweater. So I've got a full ball of yarn left over, and then I've also got a little bit as well. So I think I will be making the size large just to get rid of yarn. I don't know what else I'd do. I think I've got like 10 grams, maybe like 8 grams of Cardiff Cashmere left. And I don't know what I would do with it if not just make a bigger Sophie scarf. So I'm going to follow the pattern to make the large, and this is where I'm at. Literally, I'm like 4 increases in. But I'm loving it. I like the Sophie scarf. I think it's an easy pattern. I think, yeah, I know some people don't like it. It's very basic. You don't need the pattern to figure it out. I just like it. I think it's chic. I think this one is going to be so comfy, and I will definitely be reaching for this one. I made another Sophie scarf last year, and it was knit out of 2 strands of sock yarn held together, and it's very itchy. It's not very comfy. So I'm excited. Any spare yarn, I'm kind of like, I kind of want to make a Sophie scarf. So you might see a couple Sophie scarves later in the year, but for now, this is my second whip. I'm not having any problems with it. I think it's knitting up perfectly. I do think 3.5 is the gauge that you want for the Cardiff Cashmere. I think 3.5 is the perfect needle size. I think 4 is just a tad too big. So maybe if you want to make a Monday sweater in Cardiff Cashmere, I would recommend perhaps sizing to a 3.5, but that's completely up to you. The 4 does make it go, the 4mm makes it go so much faster. So, but yeah, this is my second whip. I needed something stuck in it. I was getting bored of texture knitting. The half fisherman's rib is not terrible because it is pretty standard. It's sort of like a rib pattern, and then it's just knitting across the back. So I don't even really have to purl all that much. However, I was getting a little bored of it. So I started a Sophie scarf. And yeah, I'm just going to continue working on this. We'll see how long it takes me. Again, not a rush. I never try to rush anything. I don't like to work under pressure because knitting to me is my hobby that I enjoy doing. So I never want to tell myself that something has to be done in a time period because I literally won't do it. So I just work on things as they speak to me, and I was feeling like casting on a Sophie scarf, so I did, and this will probably get done soon. It probably won't take me very long. Just depends what I want to work on. But yeah, that was whip number 2. Now I have one more whip, which I didn't necessarily work on a lot in January, but it was mentioned in the vlogs, and I did work on it for like a day. So I thought it was worth mentioning as a roundup to what we got through in January. So that is my Manon cardigan, which I am knitting in honestly the most stunning yarn. Look at that! Wow, on camera it's absolutely gorgeous. This is knit in a seed stitch or a moss stitch pattern. I am knitting it, I think it's called like Found Fiber Farms, Leaf Farms or something. I'm knitting it in their DK superwash, which is in, I think it's a merino superwash, in the color Berry Compote. I found this yarn on Vinted. I found 5 skeins of yarn and figured I could make a cardigan with that. Now, the problem I'm running into is that this is literally a ribbing pattern, and as I've previously said, I don't like ribbing. I find it really frustrating. Actually, it was sorry, I'm gonna go back. That was 4 balls of yarn that I found. Now that I'm thinking, I only have 3 left, so I'm literally on the first skein of yarn. They came in 100 grams, so you can see there's quite a bit, and I'm almost done with the front shaping. So sort of in the same vein that I am with the Daydreamers cardigan, I'm just shaping the front at the minute. Once I split for sleeves, I think this will be so speedy. It's supposed to be a short-sleeved cardigan. However, I'm hoping that I'm going to have enough yarn to make it long sleeve because it's a merino. I think I'll get more wear out of it in the winter as a long sleeve cardigan. I'm also sort of planning on making a project vlog for this. I've had this inspiration. I'll just mention this in podcast, but I've had this sort of inspiration that this cardigan looks like a Chanel tweed jacket. So I've kind of had this inspiration of like, what is luxury knitwear, and can we make knitwear that looks like high-end designer pieces is kind of the question that I'm answering in that project vlog. So yeah, I think the moss stitch really gives it sort of like a tweedy jacket effect. Well, even though it's not very structured, like it's a very sort of flowy, droopy fabric. I'm just trying to do my best to sort of make it look like a very vintage Chanel inspired like tweed jacket, but it's a cardigan. So it's knit in the size medium, I believe. Ooh, I'm gonna definitely have to check that because now I don't know. Oh no. That's really bad. I don't know what I'm gonna have to pick up for sleeves. I think it's in the size medium, but it might be a size small. So I will double check. Gosh, I hope I wrote that down in my Ravelry. Yikes, that's really bad. Okay, anyway, hopefully this is knit in a size small or medium, and hopefully I figure that out. But yeah, I haven't worked on this a lot. I find the ribbing pattern to be annoying simply because I just find ribbing hurts my fingers. I don't think I knit properly. I don't hold yarn in my hand. I sort of lift it up and around, which I don't actually think is the right way to knit. So I'm trying to teach myself to hold the yarn properly this year. But at the minute, I'm just not wanting to pick this up. So this is such a gorgeous color though. I really do think it works as like an over jacket piece. I've got a red leather jacket that I really like, and so this to me sort of gives that vibe of just like a statement jacket. So if I can knit sleeves on this, that is the plan. I don't know when this will get done. I feel like it's a spring piece, so maybe I'll start swapping between this and the Daydreamers cardigan. But yeah, I just need stockinette. I'm really not enjoying ribbing patterns. I just don't like purling. I mean, I don't mind purling in a row. I don't like swapping between knit and purl stitches. I find the moving of the yarn to be really annoying, and it hurts my hands. So yeah, So yeah, that was the man in cardigan. There wasn't a lot of working on it in the vlogs. I think I picked it up once, but I thought it would be worth mentioning in case anybody is interested in that. And since I didn't talk about it very much, we can talk about it here. So those are my whips and finished objects done for the month. I'm actually so proud of myself. I have no goals. I have no aims to finish anything in a certain time or in a certain month or in a certain season. I just kind of knit what I like to knit, and I try to finish it without feeling rushed. So yeah, I'm just really proud of this month. I hope you're really proud, and I want to know what you've been working on. If you have something that you've done this month that you're really proud of in your knitting, please let me know. I would really like to know. So this has led us to the final section, which is the acquisitions. I probably won't have acquisitions all the time. I did do a really big knitting for olive order in January. Not really big. I just did my year of knitting for olive yarn order in January. So I thought I would just show you some of the other yarns that I'm not using yet, like I haven't cast on, but that I plan to cast on later in the year. So first, we have the Dusty Banana Mohair, which I've cast on for my Daydreamers cardigan. That was bought, as well as the Drops Air was bought this month, but I won't show the skeins of those because they're in a project. So I will show you the skeins of what I haven't used. And that is, firstly, I've got Knitting for Olive Dusty Banana, but in the merino shade this time. My plan for this is to knit a mixed rib cami. So I've got enough to knit that sometime in the spring, sometime in the summer. Who knows? But I do love this color. I think it's the perfect color, and I'm really excited about it. So that was my first acquisition. I've got 3 or 4 balls. I think it's 3 balls of these. And then my final acquisition is 2, which I am planning to hold together to make a Great Lakes pullover, and that is the Knitting for Olive Heavy Merino in the shade Plum, and the Soft Silk Mohair in the color Violet, Dusty Violet. Now, I've never seen anyone use Plum, but I think it is the most stunning purple color ever. I was worried when I bought it that it would be too purple. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe too much red in the overtones, perhaps, but this is like the perfect blue toned purple. And I think with the Dusty Violet, it will just neutralize it ever so slightly, that it will be so stunning in a garment. Now, everyone says it's really soft. Right now, it feels very scratchy. It feels rough. I feel like there's bits of hay sort of left in the yarn, which isn't a problem because I'm happy to have a more rustic jumper. However, I also know that it blocks out really, really nicely. So I am very excited for the blocking out of that. Oh, in case you want to see the shade names. Yeah, that is my other acquisition, and that was my big yarn order. It was a Knitting for Olive order for 3 projects and the Drops Air. So those are sort of my big projects of the year. Again, like I said, I kind of want to cast on a Monday sweater in another Knitting for Olive merino held with the mohair, but that will be a later in the year probably purchase, just because I've got so much yarn that I need to use. And then I've got a bit of stash yarn just from previous projects that I would just like to get through before I do another yarn order, such as that ball of cashmere, which I'm using to make a Sophie scarf. I think that is everything. So thank you so much for checking out the podcast. I hope this is helpful for those of you who watch the vlog as like a little wrap up, or if you haven't watched the vlogs, I hope this encourages you to join us every week for the vlogs. I don't really have a consistent posting schedule. I try to get them out either the Friday or Saturday of the week of which I've vlogged, but sometimes they end up going out on a Sunday. So yeah, I will try to get more consistent with that if that is helpful for anyone, but I really hope you enjoyed, and I will see you later. So thank you again, and I will see you when I see ya.